Like most other sports, auto racing has a language all its own. You'll read it in the game manual, and you'll hear it in these driving lessons and in the track tours, so it's really in your best interest to take some time to learn the lingo. This lesson will explain some of the most commonly heard racing terms, and will serve as your Racing to English dictionary. A push happens when the rear end of the car has more grip than the front. When the car enters a corner, it doesn't want to turn, and instead it tries to drift up the track. If too much speed is carried into the corner, the front wheels will break traction first, causing the car to plow. A pushing condition is also called understeer. In general, your car will tend to push more and more as your fuel burns off and as the tires wear. A car that pushes is easy to control, but it's slow. The default setups that come with the game have a tendency to push in order to make them easier to drive. Sometimes you'll find that your car is pushing when you're closely following another car through a corner. This kind of push has nothing to do with the car's setup. It's all due to aerodynamics, and that's why it's called an aero push. Basically, when you're right on someone's tail, most of the air that would normally be pushing down on the front of your car is being blocked by the car in front. Less air on the front of the car translates to less grip or downforce at the front of the car. A loose condition is the opposite of a push. When a car is loose, its front end has more grip than the rear. When the car enters a corner, it will tend to fishtail, and the rear end will try to step out. If too much speed is carried into the corner, the rear wheels will break traction first, often resulting in a spin. A loose condition is also called oversteer. A loose car can be very fast, but it's on the ragged edge of control. In the hands of an experienced driver, a loose car is capable of turning the fastest laps on the racetrack. If you've got a car right on your tail as you're going through a corner, you can suddenly develop a loose condition which has nothing to do with the car's setup. Basically, it's the opposite effect of the aero push, and it's called, surprise surprise, aero loose. This time, a portion of the air that would normally be pushing down on the back of your car is being blocked by the car in back. Less air on the back of the car translates to less rear downforce, and that will loosen up the car. There's one other way to trigger a loose condition. It's called trailing throttle oversteer, and it happens when you quickly lift off the throttle while cornering. The car's weight suddenly shifts forward, the rear end gets light, and the car can easily go into a spin. The best way to avoid trailing throttle oversteer is to be smooth with that throttle and roll out of it rather than abruptly lift. A balanced or neutral car is exactly what it sounds like, neither pushing nor loose. It's right in the middle, and the result is a fast, well-balanced car that handles predictably. When you're driving through a corner near the limit, at some point the car will stop drifting to the outside, and the inside tires will regain traction. At that point, the car is considered to have taken a set in the corner and is more responsive to your control inputs. That's usually the point at which you want to get back into the throttle and prepare to exit the corner. This is actually much easier to feel than it is to describe. When the car sets, you'll know it. This one is straight from your high school driver's education course, and it simply involves steering in the direction of a skid or drift in order to prevent the spin. In NASCAR, you need to be prepared to countersteer at all times, but particularly when you're getting on the throttle and exiting the corner, because that's when the car loves to snap around. The earlier you can anticipate the need to countersteer, the smaller the correction you'll need to make, and the less time you'll lose. The racing groove, or the groove for short, is generally the fastest path around the track. On oval tracks, the groove usually runs right up near the wall on the straights and low in the turns. The groove is plainly visible in the turns. Just look for the darkened asphalt. If you're having trouble finding the groove, press the R key while you're driving, and it will be highlighted for you. The apex is the point on the inside of a turn where the car transitions from entering to exiting the turn. The apex is usually at the halfway point of the turn. On most ovals, the two turns at one end of the racetrack will have a single apex. Often, drivers will try to just clip the apex in order to make the turn as straight as possible and maintain a high speed. The apron is located at the bottom of the racetrack. It's a paved surface that separates the racing surface from the infield. It's almost always flat. Be very careful when you transition from the racing surface to the apron, especially at tracks with a lot of banking. The blend line is a painted white or yellow line near the apron which starts at the pit exit. When leaving the pits, you need to stay below the line before you can merge safely with race traffic. When you hear your spotter say, "Okay, merge when you can," you're clear to move back onto the racing surface at any time. The spotter is your second set of eyes out there. He sits high up in the grandstands so he can see the entire racetrack. If there's a car alongside you, or if there's a wreck, he'll let you know about it. Your spotter can be a huge help to you, but remember, things happen quickly out there. A passing lane can open up or close down a fraction of a second before your spotter lets you know about it. If you use your spotter as an aid and not as a replacement for the mirror, you'll be in good shape. The crew chief is the leader of your team, and he's in charge of your pit crew. All of your pit service requests will go through him, and he will give you scoring updates and lap times.